Parents who have disowned or genuinely stopped loving your child, what happened? Do adopted kids count? We adopted a 3-year-old from foster care. Cutest, sweetest kid. He had a few issues, but we mostly figured it was because of his history. The issues escalated quickly. When he was 7, he hit our dog with a golf club. We had to keep him away from our dog and our cat. The cat disappeared. We assumed she got out and ran away. Found out years later that he killed it and threw it in the woods. The last straw was when he burned our home down. We sent him to a residential treatment center where he stayed for 2 years. During that time he molested a roommate and became extremely violent. The insurance company told us that they wouldn't pay any more and we'd either have to pay for him out of pocket, $40,000 a month, or bring him home. We have younger children and it wouldn't be safe. We ended up telling the state we wouldn't bring him home. So now we have a verified abuse report against us because we wouldn't bring him back, even though the therapists agreed with our decision. I don't love him. I wish the best for him, but I don't feel anything toward him. My parents disowned my oldest sister. She always struggled growing up more than us. She became a teen mom with a bad older dude, partied a lot, etc. But my parents helped her a lot. They do okay for themselves but had a no co-signing rule for all 6 of my siblings and me. Still, they co-signed for her house so she could get a head start. She didn't pay the mortgage for almost 3 years before my mom got served in front of all the other nurses at her work. My parents worked tirelessly to try to work out deals where my sister and her family kept the house and got some leniency, but to no avail, because my sister never showed up for court dates. During this time she paid $12,000 for IVF and got pregnant with her 5th kid. When my mom demanded some of the money back, she accused my dad and my brother of beating her sons when my parents took them to Disney World. He didn't, and said she'd file a police report if he asked for money again. They kept asking cause it wasn't true. She awkwardly joined us for Christmas and punched my brother in the face during the meal for humiliating her oldest son by asking him if he wanted to work at my brother's company for good pay. Her oldest son is in and out of jail and my brother was trying to help him after his release, but her son said he didn't want a job and got mad. She then called the cops and told them the same brother had illegal guns in his truck, and they came on Christmas night and searched his truck. No guns found. Needless to say, she is not welcome anywhere near any of us and my mom still cries about it but refuses to talk to her again. A little different, I was disowned but I deserved it. I was an addict and a mess for a long time. My mom couldn't keep bailing me out of trouble and watch me self-destruct anymore. I wasn't living at home. She came to see me one last time to tell me she was done, not to contact her. She would no longer have anything to do with me. She was in pieces. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for her. But it was the best thing she ever did for me. Once she cut me off, my rock bottom came hard and fast. After a little while of living on the streets and my addiction consuming me, I made my way to a detox center, got a few days clean under my belt and never looked back. That was almost 15 years ago. After I was clean a little while, I contacted my mom, and little by little we built a relationship again, and now we're really close. I am forever grateful to my mom for letting me fall and letting me back into her life. My ex-wife disowned my son. We both married young when I was in the military, high school sweethearts. She became pregnant 6 months into our marriage. I don't think she connected with him at all after he was born. The most she did with him was Instagram photo shoots where she painted herself as #1 mommy. When he turned 3, I left the military. A year after that she ran for the hills. I remember it like it was yesterday. I sat down with her at a local restaurant to talk divorce plans. We split all of our financials and material items down the middle. We finally got to custody for my kiddo, something I dreaded to discuss because fathers never gain custody in my area, and she tells me, I want absolutely no responsibility. I was taken back and I asked if she was sure. She was. That one sentence hurt me more than anything else that happened during that time. My biological father wanted nothing to do with me and now I was seeing it happen with my own child but with his mother. I received full custody and she married within a year afterwards. She had another child too. Her parents try their best to be a part of his life but she still does her best to avoid him. He's 7 now and used to it, but I know it weighs heavily on him. It sucks, but it's life I guess. I have been legally disowned by my father. When I was 11 my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer, This was her second diagnosis in around 4 years. Obviously she recovered the first time after intense surgery and a lot of chemo, and he did not want to look after her like he did before. He also had a new girlfriend and her family to look after apparently, and he had no issues leaving us. When my mom passed away when I was 14, my brother, grandmother, him and I met up to discuss who I was going to live with. The plan was my brother and his family. Father was never considered, and he showed up and declared that he was in the process of going to court to legally emancipate himself from me. He went out of his way to legally declare that I was no longer his child. Just so that my brother, 22 years old with a wife and 2 young children already struggling on one paycheck, couldn't seek child support. Needless to say, it stung coming only days after my mother's funeral. As Jehovah's Witnesses, my parents disowned my siblings and me several times since I was in my late teens. One of the JW rules is that you do not associate with others who know the truth, but refuse to follow it, including family, and parents are encouraged to disown any children who have left the religion. The first time was when I was 19. It upset me, I was heartbroken, and eventually they changed their minds only to do it again a couple years later, and so on until I stopped caring and no longer attempt to be a part of their lives at all. My family disowned me because I disowned my mother. I was sexually groomed and abused/tortured by her husband for years, and when I finally told her, she not only didn't believe me, but stayed married to him for 7 years. I had to move out at 16 to get away from how I was being treated. Then when I finally began speaking to others, she started to cover her butt with her social circle by telling them that I seduced her husband. I cut her off for years and didn't ever want to see her again, but my family bullied me to just get over it and have a relationship with my mother, and that I was hurting her. Even my sister, who knew what happened, knew I stayed for so long to protect her, fell into a trap of my mother whining to everyone around her and painting me as a liar. About 4 years ago she was very suddenly diagnosed with advanced cancer and didn't have much time. I was moving out of my home state and everyone told me I needed to see her before I left, that I needed to be there, but I didn't want to. In the end everyone turned their back on me. They were so mad I wouldn't just forget my trauma just to say goodbye to someone I hadn't loved for a long time, and rightly so. I disowned a family member, not a child though. We were very close, until he ended up being caught in a pedo sting. Then I turned my back and haven't looked back. I have a sister the age of the girl he was supposed to meet. I can't associate with scum like that. Disowned my stepbrother for the same reason. He was caught in a giant sting, and was charged for having CP as well as breaking into teen girls' emails to find lewd pictures, to blackmail them into having sex with him. He was 21 when he was caught. The most effed up part was that a couple years before he was caught, he had broken into my email and done the same thing, tried to blackmail me into giving him more pictures. I was able to get him to keep his mouth shut because the pictures he found of me were from when I was 15, and I threatened to go to the cops to charge him with CP. That shut him up real quick, probably because he knew they'd find whatever else he was hiding. I wish I had gone to the cops, because maybe I could have prevented him from harming those other girls. But I honestly had no idea the extent of it. I thought he was just being a supreme creep to me personally. The SWAT team ended up raiding our house, waking up my dad with guns in his face and forcing him to sit outside in his boxers while they searched. My brother is serving 18 years. He tried to send me a few letters with some bullcrap apology. I told him to leave me the F alone and haven't talked to him since. I wouldn't say I've disowned or stopped loving my son, but it's real tough to find love for him. He's almost 14 and he's currently out of our home at a treatment facility. He's averaged 2 arrests a year for the last 2 years, and he's attacked my wife several times, our daughters several times, and the neighborhood kids several times. He's run away from school, run away from home, and tried to push me off the roof of our house, after threatening to jump off and hurt himself. We have become that family in our town where the police are called to our home on a semi-regular basis. He's been getting more violent as he gets older, not to mention bigger and stronger, and I honestly don't see an end in sight. The key fact I'm leaving out is that he's been diagnosed as high-functioning autistic and is also bipolar. That's like putting walls around a tornado and expecting it to stay inside the walls. A lot of what has occurred he had little control over because of the way his mind is, where he's constantly at war with himself, structure versus chaos, and my wife and I have tried desperately to give him the best life we can while keeping ourselves and our daughters safe, but I'm tired. It's been 8.5 years we've been going through this with him, and I've been ready to throw in the towel on him for a while. But my wife refuses to let him go, so we wake up every morning trying to give him the best life for him and our girls. I love my son, but he abused me. When he turned that violence onto his sister by choking her, I had to say goodbye. I wish my mom had done that to my brother sometimes. She saw it all. But what hurt the most was having my parents, the people who are supposed to protect me, ask me to forgive my attacker. Just because he happened to be my brother. If anyone else had done that to me, they would have gone nuts on them. But he's blood, so it cancels out, I guess? I'm not a parent. I've never disowned a child. My parents disowned my oldest sister. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. My oldest sister had a horrible relationship with my father, blames me for getting in the way of their relationship. She had her first baby, to spite him, when she was 16 years old. My father refused to give her money because she met a deadbeat child predator, and got pregnant again, then again and again. She constantly put herself and deadbeat before kids. Dad would send money to girls for Christmas and birthdays and never heard a thing. He finally gave up. She's 30, has 6 daughters and lives in a mobile home in North Carolina. We hadn't seen or heard from my sister until June of this year. My oldest niece contacted me asking to come to Florida, where I live, for the summer to get her and her sisters out of the trailer. I agree, contact sister and she agree. I set up plane tickets and organized the rooms they'll stay in. When they got here they were completely disheveled. Clothes visibly dirty, smelled foul, so covered in lice that my white towels stained gray from removing them. My niece informed me that they had been without water and electricity for 6 months. They live in a 2-bedroom mobile home. There are holes in the roof, bugs and rats everywhere. As a family, we decide the girls aren't going back to North Carolina. We tell my sister to come to my parents' house in Florida to get her life together and get back on her feet. She refused because deadbeat is not invited. Ironically, she found out that deadbeat is cheating on her. She confronts him and he kicks her out of crap hole trailer. Deadbeat said, "I would rather be homeless than live with you." Sister now works for the dollar store and doesn't pull her weight with kids. At least the girls are safe now. Not the disowned child, but my older brother is. He has been a petty crook as long as I could remember, into hard drugs since his preteens, and pretty much a full-blown sociopath. He treated every girl in his life like meat. I remember him as a teenager calling his girlfriend a slut and because she didn't want to blow him. When he knocked some chick up years later, he had a daughter, and one of the first things out of his mouth in the hospital after her birth was, "She's gonna grow up to be a whore like her mom." Let's just say that child is better off not having him as a father figure. She's been adopted since then and is living a happy childhood last time I checked. He treated my parents like trash. He would be in and out of jail and they would take him in whenever he was out. Then he'd find a job, lose it, and go back to jail. Rinse and repeat. He would get in physical fights with my mom, dad, me. He'd kick our dogs, cats, etc. We'd have to get new drywall to replace the holes he punched through those walls. He'd have freakouts and smash things all around the house. Living with him was a nightmare. The last straw was him walking out on his kid and her mother, and starting a gang fight at our house over a drug deal gone wrong. Things got really violent and I'm pretty sure weapons were involved. He left the house, and on that very same night he came back because he needed a place to stay. When my dad said no, he started fighting my dad. I stepped in at that point and almost beat the hell out of him. No one F's with my dad, no one. It ended with my dad having to hold me down to stop me from killing him, and my brother walking away down the street yelling obscenities. Haven't seen him since. This was 6 years ago. At this point, he's either in jail or dead. I may have every reason in the world to hate him for everything he's done, but I don't. He's a tortured soul who has let his demons get the absolute best of him, plain and simple. I just hope that he finds some kind of peace, even if it takes death for him to do so. Bill, if you're reading this, you're my brother and I still love you, and I hope you're okay wherever you are. Okay. I am a parent. I have 4 grown children. One of my children, I'll call her Amber, has mental health problems. I would say that her behavior makes it very difficult to love her. Her siblings want nothing to do with her. But Amber thinks she is perfectly sane and everyone else in the family is crazy and evil. She also thinks she is superior to us all and will one day be rich and famous. She is currently on welfare. No one else in the family has ever been on welfare. The other day she came over to our house. She sat down and spent about 30 minutes telling us that we had starved and abused her when she was a child. Not true. That we are horrible people. She claims that her father sexually abused her. Not true. She told me, her mother, that I am a pedophile because I blew a kiss to my 3-year-old grandchild. Amber has 3 children and claims we have sexually abused them. Not true. We love these 3 girls very much, but currently Amber will not let us see them and is probably telling them bad things about us. It is heartbreaking. After Amber had yelled at us for a while, she told us that if we don't confess to the abuse we have done, then we can have no contact with her or her children. On her way out she grabbed a bottle of our scotch and said it was not fair that we had a bunch of expensive scotch when she didn't. My husband collects different types of scotch and drinks it very moderately. She took the scotch. During this visit we noticed that Amber has lost a lot of weight and looks almost anorexic. Amber also accused her husband of being a pedophile and forced him to confess to having thoughts of pedophilia. Because Amber is involved with social services, they found out about Amber's accusations and her husband was unable to be alone with his kids for about a year, until he convinced them he was not a pedophile. Amber has been hospitalized once for mental problems but never got diagnosed. Her children were put in a foster home for 3 months because she was physically attacking her husband, hitting, scratching, etc. in front of the kids. We were able to get the kids back, but it took a $5,000 legal bill and 3 months. There is so much more craziness. She has currently started having a relationship with a man who lives near her. By the way, her husband is still with her. Apparently the man from down the street is also staying with them and the kids. We are just praying she is using birth control. She seems to get especially crazy after having a baby, though her youngest is currently 2. She also asserts that both my husband and I were sexually abused by our fathers. Not true. She claims there is a family curse. She seems to really believe this. She sent us a text message last night reiterating the no contact unless we confess. At this point we are quite relieved that she wants no contact. Her disgusting accusations have cast a pall over our love for her, and even our love for her children. We feel we need to withdraw from her family completely to avoid any more pain. But we would be there to help our grandkids in a heartbeat if there was an opportunity. Alright, so this is a family secret that I revealed and got my mother's family to disown me. Which honestly is for the better. When I was a kid my uncle molested me repeatedly over a summer I was with my grandparents. It really effed with my sexuality and took me into my late teens, early 20s and years of therapy to accept that I'm gay. Still working on trying to even trust men as whole, in part because of this. Anyway, when I was about 14 I told my mother because I just needed to get the secret out. I was in a situation I'd have to be alone with him again, and I was scared. Although looking back I was more scared trying to tell her what her youngest brother did. When I did I learned that this is a pretty common thing in her family and it happened to her by my grandmother's second husband. Well, it happened to her and her 3 other sisters. My mother apologized to me, telling me she was sorry for sending me away that summer and that the family curse caught me as well. Honestly, I needed to hear this because I hated her for letting this happen, but she had no way of stopping it or even knowing it had happened to her son. Always been something that happened to the girls but never the boys. Aren't family traditions grand? Sarcasm. We went to the cops, and because it had been so long and across state lines, there wasn't much they could do. It was my word against his. My mother family acknowledged that stuff like this happens in their family, and that I should blame the devil for this happening to me and not the person. And really, I should feel bad for him because all of this was hard on him as well. He took this time to officially come out of the closet, and they all, minus my mother, let him know how brave he is for admitting his illness. And subsequently blamed me for turning him gay. Keep in mind I was still trying to process if I was gay at this time. I was then accused of wanting to get molested and that I needed to repent what I had done and for trying to destroy his life. My mother tried to argue back, but at this point it was my mother's family versus my mother and me. My mother ended up giving slightly and told them we need time to process this. They let off and we got the hell out of there and never looked back. It's been about 10 years since I saw any of them. They blamed my mother for raising a devil-loving son, which didn't help when I finally came out. The last thing they told us is that they'll let both my mother and me back in, if, and only if I admit that a 9-year-old wanted to be molested, and of course convert back to being straight. I think they are still surprised I haven't taken them up on their offer. I don't know and I don't care. My family is super small now, and I couldn't be more pleased. Child here, I have disowned my mother, seems a common theme here. She did everything from generally invading privacy to starving us. She even went so far as to orchestrate my rape and my immediate pregnancy from said, because she wanted cute little grandkids and she didn't want to wait. I was 13. When we moved in with my grandmother we didn't know how to use silverware. I didn't start brushing my teeth until I was 15 because we never knew. Really effed up lady. My father disowned my older sister when she was in high school. She had been raped while walking to a friend's house and he blamed her. She later tried jumping out of a moving car because she was depressed and suicidal. My dad never liked my sister and refused to go to any father-daughter dances. He was distant to her for seemingly no reason. He finally said he disowned her after she was taken to a mental hospital to help with her behavioral issues stemming from the rape and literal daddy issues. He called her broken goods when he disowned her. Because she was disowned, she got pregnant at 17 to spite him, and it sealed the deal for my dad. My sister is jealous of me because I was the younger, beloved child that my dad always wanted. But she doesn't see that he treats me like a doll and makes degrading comments when my looks aren't up to his standards. My sister grew up with a voice and a free will. My father hated that. The only reason he loves me is because he not only broke my free will and my ability to choose, but thinks of me as clay that he can mold into the perfect daughter. Now I'm trying to break the mold and ignore him now that I'm an adult, but it's hard accepting it's okay not to be perfect. My sister still has mental issues from everything my father has put her through. She's become literally crazy and she requires meds and a lot of therapy even now. My sister was disowned. She was a perfectly normal and happy person until she turned 16, and then out of nowhere she joined a gang of druggies and started breaking into houses and all kinds of crazy things. Stole all of our stuff on multiple occasions. Punched grandma in head over $10, etc. The police had her drug tested a dozen times and she was always clean. Parents spent $10,000 on a stay in a psych place to try and find out if she had a mental disorder or had been sexually abused or something, and there was no indication of any kind of underlying issues. One day she came home and said that she needed money for another abortion, and my parents lost their crap. No one had known she was ever pregnant, let alone multiple times. They said that they would take the baby but she refused to go through with the pregnancy, so they cut her off then and there. And then it was like she literally never existed. I asked her why she was living her life this way the last time I saw her, and all she could say was, because it isn't boring. Oh, I can definitely answer this, but from the other side of the story. My father has always been hot-headed and violent when I was growing up. I always dreaded coming home and as a result, I couldn't wait to be done with high school. I then moved out at 18 and have been living on my own since. This did not stop him from sending me long lecturing texts, calling me several times a day to check where I was, getting verbally aggressive when I don't pick up the phone fast enough, and nearly getting the police involved when I was attending a school banquet because I wasn't back at my dorm by 7 p.m., or leaving absurd long comments on my Facebook profile pictures about how to be a dutiful daughter. At the beginning of this year, I introduced my long-term boyfriend to the, both immediate and extended, family. I let my parents know that I was planning a 2-week-long Europe trip with my boyfriend 2 months in advance. That really set my father off. He wrote me a letter, recorded me an audio, yelled in my face through gritted teeth at a public restaurant, and told every family member that he was extremely ashamed of me. He explained that I was born to serve my parents, and doing this, going on my trip that I paid for without asking for his permission, is no different than betraying the social norms and displaying to the world how disrespectful I am of our culture. He has since cut all communication with me. I'm 25, Asian female, independent, working toward admission to grad school.